Admiral Tae-min stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his fleet die. Through the massive viewing screen, he could see the enemy ships moving like shadows through space. They appeared and disappeared without warning, their black hulls absorbing all light that touched them. "Sir, we've lost another squadron," reported Commander Haewon from her position at the tactical station. Her voice stayed steady, but Taemin could see the fear in her eyes. They had been fighting the Void Remnants for 3 years now, and every battle ended the same way. The Remnants were unlike any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They came from the dark space between stars, machines that seemed to hate all living things. Their ships could phase in and out of normal space, making them nearly impossible to hit. When they did take damage, they simply converted nearby ships into more of their kind. "How many ships do we have left?" Taemin asked, though he dreaded the answer. 43 operational vessels, sir. The Nixari have 12 ships remaining, and the Kethtar have brought their last 8 warships to the fight. Kepler Station, the last major stronghold of the Galactic Defense Coalition, shook under another enemy attack. The massive space station had once been home to millions of beings from 7 different species. Now it housed the final remnants of their combined fleets. Taemin remembered when this war began. The remnants had appeared at the edge of Valorian space, destroying everything in their path. No communication attempts worked. No surrender was accepted. They simply consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind. "Sir, the station's quantum shields are down to 30%, Haewon reported. The remnants are targeting our main power cores." Through the bridge windows, Taemin could see the enemy closing in. Thousands of remnant ships moved like a dark tide across the stars. Each vessel was different, built from the remains of ships they had captured and converted. Some still showed parts of Valorian hulls, others bore the elegant curves of Nixari design, all twisted into something horrible and wrong. "All ships, this is Admiral Taemin." He spoke into his communicator. "Fall back to defensive position Gamma. Protect the evacuation ships at all costs." The Coalition had learned hard lessons during this war. They could not win through direct combat. The best they could do was save as many lives as possible and hope someone, somewhere, would find a way to stop these machines. "Admiral, we're getting strange readings from long-range sensors," called out Sensor Officer Kyung-ho. "There's something approaching from the outer system." "Another remnant fleet?" Taemin asked, his heart sinking. "They could barely handle the forces already here." "No, sir, it's just one ship. But the energy signature is unlike anything we've seen before." Taemin frowned. "Show me." The main screen changed to display the sensor data. A single contact was approaching at incredible speed. The numbers made no sense. Nothing could travel that fast without tearing itself apart. "Sir, whatever that is, it's moving at velocities that should be impossible," Kyung-ho said, his voice filled with confusion. "It's like the ship is somehow bending space around itself." "Could it be a new remnant weapon?" Haewon asked. Before Taemin could answer, every sensor on the bridge began screaming warnings. The approaching ship was creating ripples in space-time itself. Even the remnants seemed to notice as their attack on the station suddenly stopped. "All combat has ceased," reported Haewon, staring at her screens in disbelief. "Both our ships and the remnants have stopped firing." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of electronics. Outside, the vast enemy fleet hung motionless in space, as if they too were waiting to see what was coming. "Sir, I'm receiving a transmission," said Communications Officer Sung-woo. His hand shook as he worked his controls. "It's coming from the unknown vessel." "Put it through," Taemin ordered. The speakers crackled with static, then a clear voice filled the bridge. "This is Captain Jinwoo of the Earth Defense Force vessel Indomitable. We received your distress beacon 300 years ago." The words hit the bridge like a physical blow. Taemin felt his knees go weak. Earth? Humans? These names meant nothing to any Coalition database. And 300 years? The Coalition had only been sending distress signals for the past few decades. "Sir, should I respond?" Sung-woo asked, his voice barely a whisper. Taemin nodded slowly. "This is Admiral Taemin of the Galactic Defense Coalition. We don't understand. What is Earth? Who are humans?" There was a pause before the voice returned. "We are the ones who have been hunting these machines since before your species reached the stars. We're here to help." On the main screen, the unknown ship finally became visible. It was nothing like any vessel in the Coalition databases. Where their ships were sleek and curved, this one was all sharp angles and heavy armor. It looked less like a spaceship and more like a fortress that someone had taught to fly. My God, Haywan whispered. Look at the size of that thing. The human ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of Taemin's flagship. Its hull was covered in weapons and strange devices that hurt to look at directly. As it moved closer, space itself seemed to bend around it. The remnant suddenly came alive, thousands of ships turning toward this new threat. Taemin watched in fascination as the enemy fleet began to move in patterns he had never seen before. They seemed almost afraid. Captain Jinwoo, Taemin said into his communicator, the enemy ships, they phase in and out of normal space. Our weapons can't touch them. The human's response sent chills down Taemin's spine. We know, we've been fighting them for 1,000 years. Stand back and watch how it's done. As the first wave of remnant ships approached the human vessel, Taemin realized that everything was about to change. The war that had seemed hopeless just moments ago now had a new player. A player who spoke with the confidence of someone who had seen this enemy before and learned how to kill it. Captain Jinwoo's words echoed across every bridge in the coalition fleet. Admiral Taemin found himself gripping the railing of his command platform as the massive human ship moved toward the remnant forces. He had fought these machines for 3 years and had never seen them react with what looked like fear. Sir, I'm getting more detailed scans of the human vessel, reported Sensor Officer Kyung-ho. His voice was filled with confusion. The readings don't make sense. Their hull appears to be made of materials that shouldn't exist. Commander Haywan studied her tactical display with growing amazement. Admiral, look at their weapon configurations. I count over 200 gun batteries, but none of them match any known energy weapon signatures. The Indomitable continued its approach, and Taemin could see why the remnants seemed unsettled. The human ship moved with purpose, like a predator that had found its prey. Every line of its design spoke of violence and war. This was not a vessel built for exploration or trade. This was a weapon designed to kill. Communications, establish a secure channel with the human ship, Taemin ordered. I need to understand what we're dealing with. Channel open, sir, replied Sungwoo. Captain Jinwoo, this is Admiral Taemin. Your ship? It's unlike anything we've ever seen. What exactly are humans? A new voice answered, crisp and professional. Admiral, this is First Officer So Young of the Indomitable. I'll explain while our captain prepares for combat. Humans are what happens when a species spends 1,000 years learning how to kill machines that exist outside normal reality. Taemin felt his blood run cold. Outside normal reality? The entities you call void remnants have been consuming galaxies for millions of years, So Young explained. They exist partially in what you might call shadow space, which is why your weapons can't touch them when they phase shift. Haywan looked up from her station. How do you know all this? Because they destroyed our homeworld, So Young said simply. Earth was the 3rd planet in a small solar system. We had just begun exploring nearby stars when we encountered our first remnant scout ship. It followed our colony vessel home and consumed our entire system in 6 days. The bridge fell silent. Taemin had seen worlds die during this war, but to hear someone speak so calmly about the death of their homeworld was chilling. How did you survive? He asked. By becoming something we never wanted to be, So Young replied. The few thousand humans who escaped Earth's destruction spent the next century learning everything we could about our enemy. We studied their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. We modified ourselves to fight them more effectively. On the main screen, the remnant fleet was forming attack patterns. Thousands of the dark ships began moving toward the lone human vessel, their hulls flickering in and out of normal space. Sir, the remnants are beginning their assault, Haywan reported. They're using standard phase attack formation. Standard? So Young's voice held a note of dark amusement. Admiral, there's nothing standard about the way we fight. Watch and learn. The first wave of remnant ships reached the Indomitable and immediately began phase shifting, trying to pass through the human vessel's hull to attack from within. It was their most effective tactic, one that had destroyed countless coalition ships. But something impossible happened. The remnant ship struck the human vessel's hull and bounced off like insects hitting a window. They couldn't phase through. They were forced to remain in normal space, solid and vulnerable. Impossible, Kyung-ho whispered. How are they keeping the remnants from phase shifting? Reality anchors, So Young explained. Devices that lock space-time into normal physics within a certain radius. We learned how to build them from studying remnant technology. It took us 300 years to figure out the principles involved. Taemin watched in amazement as the human ship's weapons came online. These weren't energy beams or plasma bolts like Coalition weapons. These were solid projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed, each one the size of a shuttlecraft. The kinetic rounds struck the remnant ships with devastating effect. Hulls that had shrugged off the Coalition's most powerful weapons were torn apart like paper. The remnants tried to adapt, tried to use their conversion technology to turn the human weapons against their creators, but nothing happened. How are your weapons immune to their conversion beams? HFY asked. Simple material science, So Young replied. Our projectiles are made from elements that don't exist in normal space-time. The remnants can't convert what they can't understand. More remnant ships poured toward the Indomitable, but the result was the same. The human vessel's reality anchors forced them into normal space where the kinetic weapons could reach them. Each shot was perfectly aimed, each impact precisely calculated to cause maximum damage. Captain Jinwoo, Taemin said into his communicator, your crew fights with incredible skill. How long have you been practicing these tactics? Jinwoo's voice came through clearly. I am the 43rd captain to command this vessel, Admiral. The man who built her died 800 years ago. We have been perfecting our methods for a very long time. The words sent a chill through the bridge crew. 43 captains? How long did humans live? How many generations had dedicated their lives to this war? Sir, the remnants are trying something new, HFY reported. They're attempting to retreat. For the first time in 3 years of war, Taemin watched remnant ships trying to flee from battle. They had never seen this behavior before. The machines always fought to the last unit, never showing fear or self-preservation. But the humans were ready for this too. Strange energy fields erupted from the Indomitable, creating what looked like a web of light across space. The fleeing remnant ships struck these barriers and stopped, unable to jump to faster-than-light travel. Interdiction fields, So Young explained. We've learned that the best way to fight these machines is to trap them in normal space where our weapons work. No retreat, no escape, no mercy. Taemin realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. For the first time since this war began, the remnants were not the hunters. They were the prey, and the humans hunted with the cold efficiency of a species that had learned war from the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy. Admiral, Jinwoo's voice came through the communicator. You might want to recall your ships to a safe distance. We're about to deploy weapons your sensors probably shouldn't see directly. As Coalition ships pulled back, Taemin found himself both grateful and terrified. The galaxy's saviors had arrived, but they were something beyond his understanding. These humans had paid a price he couldn't imagine to become what they were now. The battle for Kepler Station became something Admiral Taemin had never seen before. As the Coalition ships pulled back to a safe distance, the human vessel Indomitable began its true assault on the remnant fleet. What followed was not a battle, but a systematic extermination. Captain Jinwoo's ship moved through the enemy formation like a shark among minnows. The massive human vessel's weapons fired in perfect coordination, each shot timed to maximum effect. Taemin watched through his viewing screen as remnant ships that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 years were torn apart with casual efficiency. Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the human ship, reported Sensor Officer Kyung-ho. They're deploying something I've never seen before. Strange devices emerged from the Indomitable's hull, creating fields of twisted energy that hurt to look at directly. Where these fields touched remnant ships, the enemy vessels began to tear themselves apart from the inside. What are those weapons? Commander HFY asked, her voice filled with awe and horror. First Officer So Young's voice came through the communicator. Conversion scramblers. We took the remnants' own assimilation technology and turned it against them. Instead of converting our ships into theirs, it converts their ships into scrap metal. Taemin felt sick. The humans had studied their enemy so completely that they could use the remnants' greatest weapon against them. How long had it taken to develop such technology? How many ships had they lost learning these secrets? Captain Jinwoo, Taemin called through the communication channel. How long have you personally been fighting these machines? Jinwoo's reply was matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing the weather. I took command of this vessel 60 years ago, Admiral. My predecessor died when we destroyed a remnant hive ship in the Andromeda Spiral. Before that, I served on 3 other ships in our hunting fleet. 60 years of command. Taemin tried to imagine spending his entire lifetime in constant warfare against an enemy like this. The mental strain alone should have broken any sane being. Yet Jinwoo spoke with the calm professionalism of someone discussing routine maintenance. "How many ships does your fleet have?" Haewon asked. There was a pause before So Young answered. "The Indomitable is our fleet commander. We are all that remains." The words hit the Coalition bridge crew like a physical blow. One ship. The entire human species had been reduced to the crew of a single warship, and they had spent 1,000 years turning themselves into the perfect weapon against the void remnants. On the main screen, the slaughter continued. Remnant ships tried every tactic they had used to destroy Coalition forces, but nothing worked against the humans. Their phase shifting was blocked by reality anchors. Their conversion beams were useless against human materials. Their superior numbers meant nothing against weapons that had been designed specifically to kill them. "Sir, the remnants are attempting to send distress signals," reported Communications Officer Sung Woo. "They're trying to call for reinforcements." "Not anymore," Jinwoo said calmly. The Indomitable deployed another field of strange energy, and every remnant ship in the area went silent. "Signal jammers. We learned early in our war that letting even one of these machines escape can doom an entire galaxy." Tactical Officer Dong Hyun worked frantically at his station, trying to understand what he was seeing. "Admiral, the humans aren't just destroying the remnant ships. They're preventing them from self-destructing, from sending warning signals, from doing anything except dying. We've had 1,000 years to study their weaknesses," So Young explained. "Every tactic they might use, every escape route they might take, every weapon they might deploy. We know them better than they know themselves." Engineer Yu Jin looked up from her technical displays. "Sir, I'm detecting massive structural stress throughout the remnant fleet. The human weapons are targeting specific weak points that shouldn't be visible to external sensors. We map their internal structure using quantum resonance scanning," So Young said. "Another technology we developed from captured remnant equipment. We can see inside their ships and target the most vulnerable components." Taemin began to understand the true horror of what he was witnessing. The humans had not just learned to fight the void remnants. They had become the perfect predator for these machines. Every human technology, every tactic, every modification to their own bodies had been designed with one purpose: making the remnants extinct. "Captain Jinwoo," Taemin said slowly, "what happened to the rest of your species? Are there others like you fighting in distant galaxies?" The pause was longer this time. When Jinwoo finally answered, his voice carried the weight of unimaginable loss. "There are other hunting fleets, Admiral. 13 ships scattered across known space, each crewed by the last survivors of human colonies. We communicate through quantum entanglement transmitters, sharing tactical data and hunting information." 13 ships for your entire species? 40,000 humans, give or take a few hundred, So Young confirmed. "We are all that remains of a species that once numbered in the billions. But we are enough. We have made ourselves enough." The last group of remnant ships tried one final desperate tactic. They attempted to ram the Indomitable directly, hoping their exotic matter hulls could damage the human vessel. It was a move born of desperation, the action of cornered animals with no other options. The human ship's response was swift and merciless. Point defense systems that moved faster than the eye could follow shredded the incoming ships before they could get close. The few that made it through struck barriers of hardened spacetime that made their hulls crumple like paper. "Sir, that's the last of them," Haewon reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "The entire remnant fleet has been destroyed." The space around Kepler Station was filled with debris and cooling metal. In less than 6 hours, a single human ship had accomplished what the combined fleets of 7 species could not do in 3 years of warfare. The silence that followed was absolute. "Admiral Taemin," Jinwoo's voice came through the communicator. "The immediate threat to your station has been eliminated. But this was just one fleet. There are others, and they will learn from this engagement. Your people need to prepare for what comes next." As the Coalition fleet slowly moved back toward Kepler Station, Taemin realized that everything had changed. The war was not over, but for the first time in 3 years they had hope. Hope that came with a terrible price, paid by a species that had sacrificed everything to become the galaxy's protectors. The aftermath of the battle left Admiral Taemin struggling to process what he had witnessed. The space around Kepler Station was now a graveyard of remnant ships, but unlike previous battles, these wrecks were not converting nearby debris or sending final signals to distant fleets. They were simply dead, as lifeless as any normal wreckage. "Admiral, the human ship is requesting permission to dock with Kepler Station," reported Communications Officer Sung Woo. His voice still held traces of disbelief at what they had just seen. "Granted," Taemin replied. "Assign them Docking Bay 7, and prepare a full honor guard." As the massive Indomitable approached the station, its true size became apparent. The human vessel dwarfed everything in the Coalition fleet. Its hull was scarred by countless battles, marked with symbols and writing in languages that hurt to look at directly. "Sir, I'm getting detailed scans of their ship now that they're closer," said Engineer Yujin. "The construction methods are unlike anything in our databases. It's as if they built this vessel to survive the end of the universe." Commander Haewon studied her tactical displays with growing amazement. "Admiral, their hull plating is over 50 meters thick in some places. And those scars, some of these battle damages look centuries old." An hour later, Taemin found himself in Kepler Station's main conference room, facing beings that looked almost familiar but were somehow wrong in ways he couldn't define. Captain Jinwoo appeared human enough at first glance, but his eyes held the cold depth of someone who had seen too much. His skin had a slight metallic sheen that suggested extensive cybernetic modification. First Officer So Young stood beside him, and Taemin could see the same modifications in her. Her movements were too precise, her reactions too quick. These were not entirely natural beings anymore. "Captain Jinwoo," Taemin began carefully, "on behalf of the Galactic Defense Coalition, I want to thank you for saving our people. But I have to ask, what exactly are you now?" Jinwoo's expression didn't change. "We are what we needed to become, Admiral. The void remnants exist partially outside normal space and time. To fight them effectively, we had to modify ourselves to see into those dimensions. The genetic modifications began 3 centuries after Earth's destruction," So Young explained. "Enhanced reflexes, improved processing speed, modified brain chemistry to handle the stress of dimensional combat. Each generation of humans became more adapted to our war." Medical Officer Minho leaned forward. "What about your lifespans? How long do you live?" "I am 137 years old," Jinwoo said simply. "So Young is 96. Our modifications extend our useful combat life significantly, but at a cost." "What cost?" Taemin asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. "We cannot reproduce naturally," So Young replied. "New humans are grown in biolaboratories from genetic templates. Each new generation is more specialized for combat than the last. We estimate that within another century we will no longer be recognizably human." The conference room fell silent. Science Officer Yejin finally spoke up. "You're turning yourselves into living weapons." "We already have," Jinwoo confirmed. "The beings who fled Earth's destruction could still laugh, could still love, could still create art and music. We can do none of those things. We exist to hunt remnants and nothing else." Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. "Is that why you're here, to hunt?" "Partly," Jinwoo said. "But also because your distress signals reached us through temporal echoes caused by remnant technology. We came to investigate and found something unexpected, which is a galaxy still worth saving," So Young said. "Admiral, in our 1,000 years of warfare we have seen the remnants consume hundreds of civilizations. Most fall within months of first contact. Your coalition has held them off for 3 years. That's extraordinary." Communications Officer Sung Woo looked confused. "But we were losing. We couldn't stop them." "You couldn't destroy them," Jinwoo corrected. "But you slowed them down, forced them to adapt new tactics, made them expend resources they would rather have saved. You bought time for your people to evacuate, to preserve their cultures, to survive." "That matters?" Haewon asked. "More than you know," So Young replied. "Most species we encounter have already given up hope by the time we arrive. They're either extinct or reduced to scattered survivors with no will to fight. You still have functioning governments, intact fleets, operational technology. You still remember what you're fighting for." Tactical Officer Dong Hyun studied the humans carefully. "What happens now? Will you stay and help us rebuild our defenses?" Jinwoo shook his head. "We cannot. There are other remnant fleets in distant galaxies, and our duty is to hunt them. But we can give you something more valuable than our presence." "What?" "Knowledge," So Young said. "The technical specifications for reality anchors, quantum resonance scanners, interdiction fields, the weapons and technologies we developed to fight them." "You would just give us these things?" Taemin asked, surprised. "The remnants will return," Jinwoo explained. "Probably within 50 of your years. When they do, You'll need these technologies to survive. But more importantly, you'll need to remember why you're fighting. I don't understand, we forgot, So Young said quietly. In our 1,000 years of war, we forgot what we were trying to protect. We became so focused on killing remnants that we lost sight of everything else. Don't make our mistake. Engineer Yujin looked troubled. Are you saying we shouldn't modify ourselves to fight them more effectively? Modify your weapons, modify your ships, modify your tactics, Jinwoo replied. But don't modify your souls. The galaxy needs protectors who remember what peace looks like, who can still create instead of just destroy. What about you? Taemin asked. What happens to the humans? Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. We continue the hunt. There are remnant strongholds in other galaxies, places where they've been building their numbers for millions of years. We'll find them and destroy them one by one, until either they're extinct or we are. And if you succeed, if you destroy all the remnants? The human captain's smile held no warmth. Then we'll have served our purpose. What happens to us after that is not our concern. As the meeting ended and the humans prepared to return to their ship, Taemin realized he was witnessing something both tragic and magnificent. These beings had sacrificed their humanity to save the galaxy, but in doing so, they had become something that could never be part of the peace they fought to protect. The Indomitable prepared to depart, carrying its cargo of living weapons toward distant wars. The coalition would survive, would rebuild, would grow strong again. But they would do so knowing that somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the last humans continued their eternal hunt, forever changed by the war they could never end. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Taemin stood in Kepler Station's observation deck, watching the human ship prepare for departure. The Indomitable floated in space like a dark monument to war, its hull reflecting the light of distant stars. In the past 72 hours, everything had changed. The technical data the humans provided was beyond anything the Coalition had ever imagined. Reality anchor blueprints that would take their best scientists decades to understand. Weapon designs that required materials they didn't know how to create. Most importantly, detailed files on remnant behavior patterns compiled over 1,000 years of warfare. Sir, Captain Jinwoo is requesting a final meeting, reported Communications Officer Sungwoo. He says there's something important he needs to discuss before they leave. Taemin nodded. Send him through. Jinwoo's image appeared on the communication screen, his modified features as calm as ever. But Taemin had learned to read the subtle signs of emotion that remained in the human captain's expression. Admiral, our long-range sensors have detected something your people need to know about. Jinwoo began without preamble. There are remnant signals coming from beyond this galaxy. Multiple fleets much larger than the one we just destroyed. The words hit Taemin like a physical blow. How many ships? At least 50,000 vessels, possibly more. They're still months away, but they're coming. The fleet we destroyed was just a scouting force. Commander Hae-won, who had been listening from her station, looked up in horror. 50,000? We barely survived against 3,000. Which is why we're leaving you more than just technical data, First Officer So Young said, stepping into view. We're leaving you a gift that goes against everything we've learned about fighting this war. What kind of gift? Taemin asked. Jinwoo was quiet for a moment, as if struggling with a decision. We're leaving you our offspring. 24 humans, the youngest generation of our people. They're still partially human, still capable of things we can no longer do. Taemin felt his breath catch. You're giving us your children? They're not children in any sense you would understand, So Young explained. They're combat-trained, genetically modified soldiers aged between 20 and 40. But they still retain some human emotions, some capacity for growth and change. Why? Hae-won asked. Why would you give up your own people? Jinwoo's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Because 50,000 remnant ships will require a different kind of defense. You'll need humans who can fight like us but still remember what they're fighting for. They can teach your people, help you prepare, and maybe they can learn to be human again. Engineer Yujin looked troubled. Are you certain about this? These beings are your species' future. No, Jinwoo said firmly. They are your galaxy's future. Our path leads only to more war in more distant places, but they might find a different path here with you. Medical Officer Minho leaned forward. What about the rest of you? What happens to the humans on your ship? We continue the hunt, So Young replied. There are remnant strongholds in 7 other galaxies. Ancient places where they've been building their numbers for eons. Each one will take years to find and destroy. Years? Taemin asked. Decades, Jinwoo corrected. Maybe centuries. Time moves differently when you're hunting something that exists partially outside normal space. We might return to this galaxy in 1,000 years, or we might never return at all. The weight of that statement settled over the conference room. These humans were heading into the darkness between galaxies, knowing they might never see their home space again. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from the outer system, Sungwoo reported suddenly. It's coming from one of our deep space monitoring stations. Put it through, Taemin ordered. The screen flickered to show the face of Station Commander Park Ho, his expression grim. Admiral, we're detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the galaxy. Something big is coming through hyperspace. Jinwoo's image sharpened with interest. How big? The signatures suggest ships larger than anything we've ever seen. Maybe 50 times the size of a normal remnant vessel. Command ships, So Young said quietly. The remnants are bringing their fleet commanders to oversee the conquest of this galaxy personally. Taemin felt his heart sink. After everything they had been through, after the hope the humans had brought, it seemed the war was only beginning. Captain Jinwoo, he said urgently, can your ship handle enemies that large? The human captain was quiet for a long moment. Normally I would say yes, but our ship has been in continuous combat for 60 years. Our weapons are operating at 70% efficiency. Our reality anchors need major repairs and our crew is tired. Then stay, Haewon said suddenly. Help us fight this fleet. Afterwards we can help repair your ship. Jinwoo shook his head. If we stay to fight 50,000 remnant ships, we'll likely be destroyed. And if we're destroyed, no one will hunt the other fleets in distant galaxies. Billions of species will die. So what do we do? Taemin asked. You learn, So Young said. You take our people, our technology, our knowledge, and you become something new. Not weapons like us, but protectors who remember what they're protecting. Tactical Officer Dong Hyun looked up from his displays. Sir, the incoming fleet is accelerating. They'll reach the outer system in 6 days. Jinwoo nodded grimly. Then we need to transfer our people immediately. Admiral, are you prepared to accept this responsibility? Taemin looked around the conference room at his officers, seeing determination mixed with fear in their eyes. They were being asked to care for the last remnants of a species that had sacrificed everything to save the galaxy. We'll take them, he said finally, and we'll do everything we can to help them remember how to be human. Good, Jinwoo said, because in 6 days you're going to need every advantage you can get. As the meeting ended and preparations began for the transfer of the human survivors, Taemin found himself thinking about the future. The coalition would face its greatest test in 6 days, but they would not face it alone. They would have human knowledge, human weapons, and most importantly, humans who might still remember what hope looked like. The Indomitable began its departure sequence, heading toward the darkness between galaxies where other wars waited, but for the first time in 1,000 years. They were leaving something behind instead of just taking revenge with them. Communications Officer Sungwoo received the final transmission from Captain Jinwoo as the human ship entered hyperspace. Remember, Admiral, the galaxy is worth saving. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And then they were gone, leaving only the echo of their words and the promise that somewhere in the vast darkness, the hunt would continue. The galaxy had been given a chance to survive, but the price of that chance would only be known when the next fleet arrived.